Alright folks, it is time for another long-winded philosophical video essay, and today I want to speak about something that maybe not all people really think of, but when you kind of open your mind a little bit and kind of look around at the culture we live in, it's a very interesting little phenomenon we have going on. And what I'm referring to is the millennial fascination with junk food slash fast food commercial culture. And I must say that particular because I've already talked about other forms of culture, popular culture, basically nerd culture. I already did the Star Wars video on that. But this is specifically about the impact of advertising, the impact of marketing, particularly of these little food providers. Now, I single these people out because these are the ones that we seem to have just a sort of an innate interest with. I mean, even if we don't actually eat at McDonald's or Burger King, or we go out and buy a bunch of potato chips, clearly we are a highly sought-after demographic. You see that with these new soft drink variations. You see it because all of the fast food restaurants are losing clientele, so they're definitely trying to latch on to millennials, come up with new ways to keep them interested with, create your own hamburger bars, which is McDonald's exploring at the moment. And of course, you're seeing all these weird items coming out month in, month out. Taco Bell literally has some weird newfangled Franken food coming out virtually every 28 days. Same thing with Burger King. You're seeing all these weird things. We just saw the Most American Thick Burger. So we're definitely in the era of gimmick foods, where the offerings themselves really aren't so much based around the idea of the food being appealing or even good tasting, but the fact that the foods in and of themselves are some sort of event or experience. And I think that's a really fascinating thing to explore from a millennial sociological perspective, because we are really the first generation in history to grow up completely immersed from cradle to grave in consumer marketing. Our parents, they grew up with TV and the radio, but they didn't grow up completely enmeshed in a form of marketing which specifically targeted young people, which is what we all grew up in. We grew up in the late 1980s, especially the early 1990s. We had child-centric advertising targeting us day in, day out. Commercials, comics, toys, video games. Basically, it's been a part of our lives. It's pretty much shaped who we are. It's been a big part of our character, and I think it's done a pretty big part in shaping our general generational outlook on things. I think that's kind of our shared culture. Obviously, we all come from different backgrounds. We have different religions, different sexual orientations, different political philosophies, but we do have a unifier. Two common unifiers, basically. That's the fact we both grew up in an area of expedited technological upgrades. So obviously technology is one of the huge factors of our shared experience. And the other is the common consumer experience, which I'm going to include being not only the fast but also the pop culture. It's the fact that we grew up in the same basically environment where we were exposed to the exact same kind of advertising, of marketers saying, hey, you need to go out and buy this. Hey, we got Dunkaroos. Hey, we got the Sega Genesis. Hey, we've got PlayStation. We got light-up shoes. We got all this stuff. So we grew up being bombarded by that. Really the first, like I said earlier, generation throughout history to where that has been the case. So I bring up fast food and the junk food marketing angle primarily because I think that's the one that's kind of had the most overall impact on us. I'm not just talking about, the obesity rates and some of these other holdovers. I bring that up because that's the type of advertising that most specifically targeted young people. Remember when you were a kid and you were growing up and you're watching Saturday morning cartoons? Obviously you saw a lot of ads for toys, but I think eventually you get to a point where you kind of abandon playing with action figures and dolls. Most people get to that point. There's a lot of men children out there that don't let that go, but we're not talking about that. But the other big thing that was pretty much crammed down our throats, both literally and I think metaphorically here, is we had a lot of ads for really unhealthy foodstuffs, either in the form of processed consumer goods, your Oreos, your Elf Fudge, your potato chips, your pop quiz popcorn, all that fancy, astonishing, delicious stuff that we saw on Nickelodeon back in the day. And of course, the fast food meals, because we were the children weaned by Ronald McDonald and Grimace and the Burger King Kids Club and all the stuff going on at Pizza Hut with the little pizza guy. What was his name? Can you remember the name of the anthropomorphic pizza that Pizza Hut tried to use to sell products back in the Clinton years? He had a name. I remember them quite vividly. Just can't remember the name. That's gonna haunt me. Okay, whoever comes up with that first gets a prize of some kind. I'll mail it to you. Scout's honor. But we were bombarded by that. That was a part of our shared cultural experience. And, that's really one of our first tastes of being a consumer. And as we all know, in a democratic state such as the one in America, it's all about mass consumption. That's the whole reason you do anything. You go to school so you can make money. You make money so you can buy stuff. It completely drives not only our economy, but really our entire world outlook. That's the whole point of doing anything, so we can go out and buy computers and cars and all these other things that make us complete, that would not otherwise make us complete, because, I don't know, this is the way the advertising works. But you see, we start off with junk food, we start off with the fast food, and that's kind of carried every day, because I think you look at the YouTube, you look at the blogs, and people are definitely interested in this stuff. People, they want to see videos of people eating disgusting food. They want HD reviews of Dunkaroos or whatever the most common weird food offering is. People are just innately interested in that, and I think that's kind of a holdover from childhood, because that ingrained marketing, that appeal, that idea that food is not just food, but actually some sort of experience, an event of some kind, I think is still kind of part of our psyche. And I think we're interested in that not only because of marketing, but because it is such an American thing. You know, when you look at fast food, for all of its faults and foibles, and you can criticize the fast food and junk food industry for a lot of things, and rightfully so, at the same time, kind of look at it like this. Through the fast food and the low-cost processed food culture, you know, you have ready access to food. I mean, I think really, when you think about things in the long haul, America's greatest historical contribution to humanity is the fact that we were the first society in history where you could be poor and fat simultaneously. So if you're like me, you didn't really grow up in a home with the most amount of money, you ate a lot of junk food. You ate it because it was cheap, it was readily available, and with it, it kind of had its own culture. You know, it had a certain mentality all its own. I mean, you watch these commercials for Franco-American and Burger King and all these other things. And I think that's something that's a mentality that's still kind of all over today, that we're seeing these food items, not necessarily as things that are delicious, because most of the time they kind of taste like crap, to be honest, but we're still mesmerized by them. We're still sort of enchanted by the idea that these foods aren't just things with calories that we can eat and walk around and burn off, but they're actual parts of our culture, our shared humanity. They're parts of our childhood and part of what makes us us, as much as we regret to say it. So I think it's an incredibly powerful advertising tool. And you look at the history of marketing to children, you know, the whole idea is to brand lifelong, brand consumer loyalty. And you know, you saw this way back in the day, in the 60s, they had the candy cigarettes, right? And they actually had the brand names of actual brands on them, like real tobacco manufacturers. So the kids ate those when they were children, the candy, and then when they become old enough to smoke, guess what brands they picked? The ones they grew up with. So I think this is really such a huge, vast, interesting part of our psychological processes. You know, just how much of an impact did all that childhood marketing have on us, on shaping who we are today? You know, our diet, our taste, literally, because a lot of stuff we eat now, I mean, is just so over inundated with just chemicals and salt and sodium and things that really 100 years ago would just be considered absolutely obscene. Or take it back even 30 years ago, I think some of the stuff we're eating, the contents, the serving sizes especially, the overall weirdness of them would be considered something that would just drive people crazy. But that's a part of who we are. And I think, you know, our interest, our fascination with this, in addition to being sort of a holdover from childhood, has a huge, profound influence on our lives, but really, it's such a minute part. And of course, with advertising and the marketing, the whole idea is to make it become something that transcends just being a consumer product, to being, some great life experience, some, cultural identifier. And I think our interest today, we're kind of deconstructing it. We're taking that advertising, the way food is manufactured and literally processed and sold to us, and just kind of ripping it apart, but doing so in a very sarcastic way that even the marketers and the advertisers themselves just don't pick up upon. So when you look out there and you see kids who are just going crazy over all these weird cereals and foodstuffs, don't take that as them just being brain-dead consumers. I think there's a little bit more to it. I think what they're doing is the old philosophical jiu-jitsu. Basically, you take what people give you, and then you eat it, you enjoy it, and then you spit it right back out in their face in the form of really abstruse, poorly lit YouTube videos and blogs that do really abstruse social commentary that seem like fawning endorsements at first. But, that's just generally who and what we are as a culture, because it's been such a huge cultural shaper. It's been a huge factor in our developments. And I think the fascination with it, whether it's unhealthy or not, is still now the beholder. But I think it kind of goes back to a lot of different things, and it's something that's just so incredibly interesting to me, that it's about so much more than food. So basically, to kind of summarize, when we're looking at all these weird, food items, all these highfalutin new candies and fast food objects, at the end of the day, we're not really celebrating them as food. We're celebrating them as cultural constructs. And when we consume them and we devour them and we throw away the wrappers, we're not just enjoying a gustatory experience. We're not just enjoying really cheap cuisine. We're actually kind of commenting on the culture around us and the nature of, just mass consumption and the whole production cycle, and especially how these mega conglomerates are telling us how to live our lives. You give us lemonade, and we give you lemon-flavored Oreos. And it's satirical content.